Torah isn't education, it's transformation. This is Chai Chinuch with Rabbi G.
101.9 Chai FM, Chai Chinuch with Rabbi G. We are back as we do every Monday between 11 to 12. And we meet here and discuss about different things, different topics, different issues. Anything that we can do to learn from the professionals out there, anything we can discuss in order to be able to improve ourselves, be the people we want to be, living in the world we want to live in, influencing our friends, our families, our communities, etc. And today we're going to have a very important discussion. We are going to speak about language, learning language, and specifically with the big question about regarding kids. Should they be learning double languages or triple languages, or how many languages? And if not, should we be focusing on their natural mother tongue, or should we be focusing on perhaps English, which they will probably be using 90% of their time in English and not necessarily in other languages? So a lot about that and a lot about discussions, definitely discussing it with the people that are in the front line of these discussions and actually making things happening. Let's start in introducing our guest today. I think we're going to dive straight into it so we can have a proper discussion here. So firstly, I'll say good morning and welcome to the show to Siwaphiwe Sibeko, who is a programs officer at the Fundi Sayo. Good morning, Siwaphiwe. Can you hear me? Okay, I see there's some of a technical issue over here, but I'm sure that you will be joining us shortly. Okay, so just want to say good morning to Siwaphiwe Sibeko, first programs officer at Fundi Sayo. Siwaphiwe, can you hear me?
Good morning to you too. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much.
Okay, amazing. So a word about you and what you do. Let's get to know you a bit. Tell us.
All right. My name is Siwaphiwe Sibeko, born, bred in the Eastern Cape. My early schooling is in the Eastern Cape as well. Moved to the Western Cape, did my primary schooling, high schooling, and my tertiary education in the Western Cape as well. Currently based in Johannesburg. I now work as a programs officer with Fundi Sayo. So my work is between facilitation and administration of our early literacy interventions in the 3 provinces that we work with.
Okay, amazing. Let's get to know our second guest here, Dr. Muavia, who is educational expert. You are here with us this morning. Good morning. Thank you for being with us today. Doctor, we can't hear you. Can you hear me? Okay, we will be right back with you, Dr. Muavia. In the meantime, let's say good. Oh,
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning. Thank you for being with us. A word about you and about your work.
Yeah, I've been in education for more than 40 years, primarily as a teacher from primary school until a principal. Got to 5 universities, and for the past 20 years, I focus on how to turn around education, not in South Africa, in some countries in the Commonwealth.
When you say turn around education, what do you mean?
So you identify the problem and I find a solution. So I don't.
When there's a student struggling.
Pardon?
When you see a student struggling.
No, I'm working with systems.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's about, yeah.
Okay, so we'll talk about the problems in a moment. There's a lot I'm sure we can discuss and need to discuss. We're going to take a short break and then we're going to continue, and I will introduce our next guest on the show, and we're going to start the discussion. A short ad break and we will be right back.
Torah isn't education, it's transformation. This is Chai Chinuch with Rabbi G.
101.9 Chai FM, Chai Chinuch Norvegi. We are back and we are discussing today language, education, everything involved with that. And I introduced our two guests before the break, and I just want to continue with introducing our next guest on the show, who is Fundi Sayo, and she is Fonda Wendy's Eastern Cape lead. Fundi, thank you. Fundi Sayo, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Good morning, Revi, and good morning to Siwa in Muavia. My name is Fundi Sayo, and I also is born and bred in the Eastern Cape, and I am the lead of the Eastern Cape intervention for an organization called Funda. Thank you very much for having me this morning.
Absolute pleasure. Okay, let's start going into this discussion. Right before the break, when I introduced you, Dr. Muavia, you spoke about the problems in the system that you identify and turn around. Do we have problems in our system?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Particularly around foundational learning and the ability to understand what they learn.
Let's look at a bit of the challenges. Maybe give us a taste of what you're seeing on day to day that is concerning you about the education of our students.
So my colleagues will know the organization was actually set up by Nick Spall based on the Pearl's results. So there are two things. One is that you can actually not trust internal assessment in our system because we don't have a quality process in education. The results of a learner in school A compared to the results of a learner school B, if two learners are getting 80%, those two 80% have no meaning unless you get to the bottom of it. So I'll talk about why it is so.
Are you saying that there's no government protocol?
There is no quality assurance in the system at all. When we come to language, and so I would want to engage with the colleagues. So since 2006, the amount of learners who can read with understanding has only been around 20%. And this is mother tongue. So we'll get to mother tongue in a way. So 80%.
So before you continue, Dr. Muavia, I need to ask you, if it's 20% in mother tongue, do we have statistics about English?
Well, English is included. So I'll speak to that about it.
Okay.
So since 2006, only 20% of our learners can read with understanding since 2006, and nothing has changed. Funda has started after 2017, and they're going to change the world, and nothing has changed at all. Brilliant amount of millions and millions and millions. And I'll share with you as a school turnaround, and I'll engage with the colleagues about it. So it's not about them. It's about the way we want to find the solution. And most of what we do is what I call superficial stuff. We have not done the hard work. And so the last point is that remember that language is very emotive. There's a lot of emotion around that. But let me give you an example. English and Afrikaans is called a block language. So like English, it would run, I am running to my school. So these are blocks of learning. The vernacular languages aren't block languages. It's what's called technically gluey language. So isiXhosa is based on your noun your verb, and you build your sentence around that. And so what we've been doing is that we have followed the design of English, and we've implemented in our local languages. So it's never going to work. So everyone was saying, oh, then it's going to be difficult. Finnish is gluey language, and they are the top country in the world. So it's not the fact that the language is a gluey language. You learn, you teach differently. So in Finland, they teach the understanding of sound 2 years longer than South Africa, because we follow the English and Afrikaans one, which is based on phonics. And so we go around what the English language is saying.
Right.
And so that's what I do as a turnaround. I look at the detail of how do you turn things around and you fix it up.
So the interesting thing is that you're saying, and it sounds like that it's also not working in English. So then that even raises a bigger question. Then what's the point at all? Unless it's maybe that in English, instead of I run to school, they're doing I'm running from school. And that's kind of a bit of the challenge that we're facing in the educational system of maybe the schools are not really a place of growth and continuation and education. But let me ask you, Siwaphiwe, I hear that you are trying for 9 years already, and sounds like you're quite stuck. Where are you stuck or not? What is working? What isn't working? What's happening within the system and within the change that you're trying to create and do the work? Just you're going to have to hold with that question for a short while, because we do have to take a short break, and we will be right back.
Torah isn't education, it's transformation. This is Chai Chinuch with Rabbi G.
101.9 Chai FM, Chai Chinuch with Rabbi G. We are back, and we are in the beginning of a very important discussion about our educational system, and not only about the challenges and the failures, but also, is it even possible? Are we teaching language in the correct way? Are we teaching the practicalities of every language in its own way, or are we kind of going with main concepts of English, Afrikaans, and putting them on the other languages as well, which is obviously not going to work too well? And right before the break, I asked Siwaphiwe Sibeko, who is a programs officer at Funda and has been working in this field from 2017, 9 years. I'm wondering to hear, are we creating a change? Is there change happening? Is something that can be worked on? Or as Dr. Muavia said, we're stuck and there's nothing happening. Siwaphiwe.
Thank you so much. I think, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that this is a complex phenomena. The work itself, it is complex. I joined Funda a year ago, and Funda is 9 years old. So we're still young as well. And we are learning within the sector. Unfortunately, we are not hoping to solve all the literacy problems in South Africa. We are just, for now, in four provinces. But what I can say has been success or a learning that we have found out is that it has been demonstrated that embedded instructional coaching inside the classroom works for the teachers. Because also we are a young organization and we are just one organization. I'll speak about Funda. We may not account for a magnitude of success in learning outcomes of children or teacher professional development. But in the research that Funda has done in the provinces and evaluations that we worked on, we could see a significant change. Can we account for the whole country? No, we cannot do that. At the same time, we also have learned that giving material, pedagogical structured material to the teachers inside the classroom may shift the learning outcomes of the children. And we have also seen that if those materials are in the languages that children understand and they are taught in the way that they understand them, we may be able to shift the learning outcomes in the early literacy. But we are just drop in the ocean. And therefore, I think what Dr. Muavia is speaking about as being stuck, maybe we are not outside we're just dropping the ocean. That's all I can say for now. And maybe if we can embed then the strategies that work within teaching language, and specifically mother tongue languages in primary education by scaling and collaborating in partnerships with the government and other organizations that do the similar work that we do, we would be able to say we are stuck, but I cannot say we are not stuck. There is work that's happening.
So what is the work? So when we look at the work, it sounds like you're addressing the work with the teachers. And I find it's hard for me to ask this question, but I will ask it anyways. How does that work, considering that if there's no quality checks in place and there's no protocol and system, as Dr. Muavia said, what interest do the teachers have to just get more work from you if they don't need to actually answer to it or deal with it? You're, in a way, yes, you're making it better for the kids, but you're kind of putting more work on the teachers.
So as Funda Wande, we partner, and I think my colleague Usis Fundi will add on this question because she works better in the implementation side of the programs. With Funda Wande, we partner with the provincial departments of education. We don't come with our work. We collaborate with them and they tell us what is it exactly that they would want their teachers to do. And therefore, we are not coming with more material, more work. Our trainings are in conjunction with the Department of Education. It's not as something that we are doing on the side, but we are doing it with the Department of Education in the provinces that we work on. Sis Fundi, I would like to invite you here to add on the question that we've been asked.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Siwa. Indeed, everything that we do via the provincial departments. We're very aligned to what is expected by the government for the teachers to comprehend. And it's not necessarily adding to the work. So whatever we do is more into building that capacity that they already have, acknowledging that the teachers are actually professionals that have been trained, but they do not necessarily get all the skills through the training of the teaching of reading. And what we do is then we'll bring the people to actually come and assist those teachers and say, these are some of the strategies that you can use in the teaching of reading of language. So that is the approach that we are taking in this one. And also then I would actually go further and say that each and every intervention that we do, we add a bit of an evaluation to it so that we can actually measure if what we are doing is actually reaping any results. And as Siwaphiwe said, the problem in the country is huge. 19% of learners, only 19% of learners can read with meaning. And we might be in our small corners because we are a drop, as Siwaphiwe said.
Fundi, we lost you.
To bring a change. Sorry.
Okay. Fundi, so I just want to ask you, what you're saying is incredible. What are the measurements you're putting in place to see the change and to see the difference? What are you seeing that is shifting?
As Doctor has said, there are no assessments that are standard for those teachers. So any teacher could actually set up an assessment and say, this is how I'm going to measure my learners. And I fully agree with him in saying that when he says that 80% at school A is definitely not the same as at school B. So one of the things that we do is we produce materials that have got grade-specific assessments. So the assessments that we conduct with our learners are not the generic ones that the teachers could just develop. We develop our own assessments. They are grade-specific. They are aligned to the curriculum that the teachers are supposed to read. And also they test the depth of whether the learners are able to read and write with meaning and with comprehension. So that is what we put in place, and then the evaluations, the external people that come to evaluate, actually base those on that.
Okay. So, Fundi, I want to ask you a question, and then I'll go back to Doctor, which I'm trying to understand. You know, I over the past decade on this show, I've been speaking to tens of maybe, or even over 100 of organizations, and I have only respect and admire you guys as people on the ground who are going and trying to make a difference and creating a difference. And it's hugely appreciated, and I'm a big supporter and a big fan of your work. Yet, the reason we're in this situation, that wonderful people like you need to do the work, is because government is not managing the education system. And it's not happening. And we're stuck. And we're at 19% of learners with understanding and meaning that can read and have meaning to it. And we keep on going back to the organization saying we're partnering with government. But you're only here because the government has failed in the first place. So is the right route to partner with government in order to change the failure of the system by connecting to the system, or do we need to look at a different way?
My thoughts are, firstly, maybe I would not want to say the government has failed. I might maybe say that the government does not have the capacity to do this on their own.
You're right. I take it back. I'm not saying so, Fundi, let me correct. I'm not saying government failed. I do think that 19% of students achieving is a failure. But I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. But we do need a different system. But there's definitely a failure in the system if 19% is a level of success. Go ahead.
Okay, so for me, it's a combination of things. The government cannot do this on their own. The NPOs like ourselves do not have the funds and the capacity to go at large scale to the extent that we would want to. So to make the small changes that we're seeing to improve that 19% to be as big as we'd want them. The third thing is also academically, the way our teachers have been trained in the universities, in the academic institutions, is not necessarily the way that is actually needed to actually change the status quo on the ground. So for me, it is something that needs all of us, and that is what Fundawande is trying to do. A combination of the government education department, a combination of the NPOs and also the academic institutions that say, how do we train best our teachers that there is not this gap, specifically in the early stages, in the foundation phases, where the learners are expected to learn and do things in their mother tongue, where there's an expectation that they read and comprehend. And so we are saying that, yes, 19% is a huge failure for the country, but we cannot do this on our own. We need to actually, all of us, meet together. It's going to be the funders, it's going to be other NPOs, it's going to be academic institutions and the education department working together in trying to make sure that we improve on that 19%.
Okay. So, Dr. Muavia, when you hear this, what are your thoughts on this shift that needs to come from the ground? You're looking at systems, you're saying the system is not working, we're failing. Is the direction you see through government, through NPOs, through third options, or everyone together? You know, there is, and Fundi brings up a very valid point. A lot of the teachers were trained to become teachers many years ago and potentially are still stuck in ways that are based on English from the past, or are still not up to date with the opportunities of educational learning and other methods. How do you see a way forward?
Firstly, we are spending part of the top 10 countries in the world in terms of our GDP. That's the amount of money we spend in education.
Okay.
So there is no excuse for resource, all of that kind of stuff. So that's the first point. The second point is that we don't have the lack of capacity in the country. We have enough great scholars in this work. But what we're trying to do is we take on a backyard strategy in a country that needs to compete internationally. And so all of it, and so I hear my colleagues saying they are new into the system. I've been around for 40 years in education. And since 2006, every time when I speak to the foundation phase specialists, heads of the provinces, in 2006, they came up with a project and said, we now know how to fix it. And in 2011, the results didn't change it. And I engaged with them and they said, no, we now know how to do it after 5 years. In 2017, Nick Spall came in and he said he know exactly how to do it. And now he's gone somewhere else. And so my problem is that everyone is trying to fix it, but they don't stay around long enough to be accountable. So even the officials in the department tend to change all the time and said, well, it's not me, it was someone else, and all of that. The comment that we've been at it since 2006. So it's 20 years. And in that, we have generations of kids coming through with no ability. So that's the one thing. The second
But Dr.
thing
Muavia, I
is
have to
that-
ask you, Dr. Generally in democracies, we have 4 years of government and they manage to do a good job. You're saying people were held in this position for 6 years. That should be enough to create some kind of change. That's not a short term of position.
Well, strangely enough, people in foundation phase tend to stay a long time. And I know the official, I'm based in Cape Town. This person who's the head of education in foundation phase, she was around in 2006. Yes, she was not part of the head, but it's what our country needs is a system that the entire country needs to work towards. What we do is we come up with a policy idea at national, and the practice falls around. And so I am due to launch a 3-volume series of book around, and the essence of those books is the following. We have fixed up our software in education, the curriculum, but we haven't fixed up the hardware. It's what to do. And so I can sit here and I do work in Umtata, Lusikisiki, flagship around there. So I know what goes on in what is generally called black schools. That of the time that's spent in education in the school of 5.5 hours every day, we only get about 3 hours of effective teaching and learning every day. It's because of the management, and it's not the blaming of teachers. For example, our school is full of 85%, 95% of base classroom teachers, but we don't have people who are supervising the work that needs to be done. And we don't have a comprehensive strategy of how to fix it. The last point that I want to make is that we're not following basic processes, what curriculum is. So let's talk about something that we all should know. If I am a matric learner today for this year, if I don't use and look at the exam papers of last year and 5 years ago, can you imagine how am I going to go to the exam well prepared? Because I'm flying blindly. I've got no clue what's going on. Likewise, with this study that we spoke about that gives the 19% results, there's a program called Pearls. Pearls are using readers Now, this is where South Africa falls flat. We want kids to read a lot of fancy local reading, but that doesn't assist the kid when they go to the Pearl studies. So they can read all of the fancy local books, but in the Pearls there are certain words that, so the word the kids can't understand means that it's not about whether they can read, it's about whether they can understand what they read. And our parents, our schools don't spend enough time. All they do is get the kids to read, but they don't know what the meaning of those words are. So different dictionaries and thesauruses is what you need to build, and not what all of these organizations are throwing a lot of reading books that kids need to read. It doesn't assist them.
So, Dr. Muavia, we need to take a break, but when we come back, you mentioned the hardware and the software, and I want to hear from the organization about a different aspect of the hardware. Because we're talking about the curriculum and we're talking about the methods of teaching, etc. Almost ignoring a reality that I've seen when I've gone down to actually try and do things in communities, that we're facing many times kids that are hungry, that we know that hungry children don't learn. I walk into classes and there's not enough chairs. And I was even in touch with the school and said, I'm happy to get a private donation to make sure there's chairs in the classes. What is the school how can the school assure us that the chairs will still be here in a year? And they'll be in a good position and be looked after. They couldn't make a commitment. We're looking at other behavior challenges, sometimes even violence around. We're looking at many different aspects that will not allow a student to learn, even if we have the best curriculum, even if we have the best protocols and everything. And I'm wondering how that hardware concept comes into practicality, and what can the organizations do, or what can country do, what can people do, what can we do? But we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll dive into that. We will be right back.
Torah isn't education, it's transformation. This is Chai Chinuch with Rabbi G.
101.9 Chai FM, Chai Chinuch with Rabbi G. We are back, and we are in a fascinating discussion about the challenges that we are facing with language teaching, with education in South Africa currently, and what we need to do. And right before the break, I asked about the facilities, the hardware, the difficulties of eating learning when you're hungry, etc. What can we do? What is happening? What are you seeing? And what needs to change from that regard? I'll start with you, Siwa, regarding that side of things. Is that an area that Fundi works with, that you're purely based on education? Where are you with this?
Thank you so much. When I speak to people, I always say education is the most complex sector, because the child that goes to school is not just there for the books. They come from communities and they come from circumstances. And as Funda, we can acknowledge the fact that we cannot do everything for that child as in their holistic learning. And we had made a decision to prioritize and look into the curriculum. But if I can make a comment on the fact that we do know that curriculum alone will not get us where we want to be, because that child comes from a community, that child comes from another system that is not the education system, and they are now here. And I think maybe that's why it is complex for us to get to where we need to be at, because that child, that learner that we all want to get to from a 40% to a 90 needs to be clean, needs uniform, needs parents. Some of them are heading their homes. We do acknowledge that with Funda, but we also acknowledge that we cannot do it alone. That's why at the beginning I had said, should we all have a goal where you contribute your expertise towards this so that we are not just sitting in our little corners trying to sort this out. I think what would work better is if we can have a place, for lack of a better word, where we all know who does what and how can we all contribute meaningfully to this child. NASCI is already doing that by collecting all the organizations in South Africa that has anything to do with education, nutrition, funding, inclusive education, literacy, or curriculum, so that we can all know who does what. And I think the best thing that we can do now is to collaborate meaningfully towards the same goal, because the child that we're all trying to better life for exists in different spheres of life, and one organization can't do all of them.
Right. So Fundi, I want to ask you, as someone who's on the ground, what is the reality of the schools you're looking at in the communities you're part of? Are there chairs? Is there food? Is there functional systems besides the actual academics?
So as Fundawande, we're very intentional about getting into functional schools. So the first thing that we do before we get to any intervention, we actually assess, does the school have got leadership? Is there leadership in place? Is there full SMT component? One of the issues or problems that Prof or Doctor might not have highlighted is the fact that some of them don't even have sufficient foundation-based teachers. Some of the schools in the ground are multi-grading. So for us to be able to create any kind of impact, we actually look into these factors because they are the reality that we're sitting in. And we look into functional schools. We look into schools that have got proper fitting nutrition that is happening. We're also looking at schools where we know that there is learning and teaching that is happening. And one of the studies that we had, it is a reality and the truth that 5.5 hours is not fully utilized in most of the schools. And that is something that we also look into when we do our own intervention and also our own evaluation, making sure that sufficient time, which is what is prescribed, is used towards that. And we actually measure what time do our teachers waste and not using it efficiently for teaching. So those are the things that we are looking at, because those are the realities that are on the ground. And as Siwaphiwe said, it's not things that we could actually sort by ourselves. We need the NASCIs, we need the buy-in from the Department of Education, and also proper instructional coaching and mentoring and also monitoring to happen in the schools across South Africa so that we can see the outcomes. Without looking into those per school, we are not going to get anywhere.
So Dr. Muavia, hearing this reality, and I want to add to that another aspect of the big question that, we often speak about opportunity for work, opportunity to build stable families and to build a strong economy and strong, successful people. Most of that in this country currently, if I'm not mistaken, is happening in English. With our limited ability and resources regarding the mind space of the students, etc., should we be focusing on mother tongue, or should we be focusing on a language that is the most dominant and popular based on even province? Maybe some provinces it wouldn't be English. Maybe it would. I'm not saying about the actual language, but should we look at the most opportunity, seeing the challenges, or should we look at the stability of the culture of, growing with your own language, which has huge benefits on its own? And just to complete the question, and maybe Finland is not what we can go to, because, the reality over there is that the kids are probably learning in classes that have enough chairs and have a structured day and have food and have what they need. Where are we going, and what would be the direction for South Africa?
You want me to respond?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So 3 things. One is that in the majority of our schools, and so if we had this conversation close to 1994, the reference was all about kids don't have food, there's no enough chairs, all of that stuff. since then, that had disappeared, but we are still recycling that excuses. Because
Dr. Muavia,
schools,
I have to stop you. I've seen today, not today, last few months, in personally classes without chairs. I've seen it. That is a reality.
So I'm going to give you an example of that. So this is where the hardware comes in. So there's a whole system about giving kids food every day. So in that is, and the chairs are said. So let's look at the chair. Any supplier that gives you a chair to the school, there is a lifespan to that chair. So let's assume that chair, you can only expect us to replace the chair after 5 or 8 years, okay? This is where the hardware falls flat. The chairs gets broken after 1 year, and then they want new chairs, and the department would say, but we've just given you a set of chairs. So the hardware that I'm referring to is that what we've changed is the curriculum, but we have not changed what happened in, let me use the generic word, black schools. We have not changed. We're still running on the old apartheid way of doing things. So if I go to any class now, and in foundation phase, the teachers have 266 hours for languages in a year. Okay. So there are 170 school days for teaching and learning, and you have 266 hours. It means you have close to 2 hours to focus on learning. So that's what the policy is saying. But what happens in the school is not what's happening. Right. It's the school bell rings at 8 o'clock, but no one starts at 8 o'clock. People only start at 10 past and quarter past. And when the bell rings, and it expects the kids to get from the one class to the next class within 2 to 3 minutes, they take 8 minutes or 10 minutes. And so what you're losing out, as I indicated earlier, you're losing an hour of your, and that's the hardware of the school.
Right, definitely, sorry, we need to take a short break, which is definitely the dysfunctionality of the system that you're talking about 100%. Short break, and we're running out of time. So when we come back, just if you could comment about the language question that I asked. Short break, we'll be right back.
Torah isn't education, it's transformation. This is Chai Chinuch with Rabbi G.
101.9 Chai FM, Chai Chinuch, Rabbi G. We are back, and we are really at the end of the show, but I have to get an answer from Dr. Muavia about the big question about the language and the focus. So, Doctor, what would you say is the vision and the recommendation, considering that most of the opportunity may be in a language that is different to the native language, and with our limited functionality of the system and limited works, what should be our focus?
Yeah, 3 small points. The one that you're saying that, so language is in mother tongue only for 4 years, from reception year up to grade 3. Then everyone is changing to either English or Afrikaans. The reason why it's changed, and a lot of people don't want to admit this, is that the local vernacular languages are only designed as a spoken language. It was never intended to be an academic language. So all of our vernacular languages don't have the academic strength as English and Afrikaans. What makes English and Afrikaans academic languages is that they build that language. And so when I come to your point, what about English? it already happens in our schools. The majority of our kids from grade 4 onwards are taught in English. This is where the problem is. We still believe that their mother tongue is the home language and the English is the additional language. But when you study science don't have a second kind of level of word for science. You either need to know the home language of science, and that's where the kids are falling apart. If you learn your mother tongue in a second language, you get struggle when you go to the home language, the levels. So I taught commerce. There is no lower word for depreciation. You either know depreciation or you don't know. And that's the word of the subject. And so a country like Namibia made a decision from their independence. The language of learning and teaching would be English. We are still fuffing around for 30 years. The last point is, go to all of the political parties and listen what the meeting is in. It's in English. Despite it could be 5% of people in that, the ANC has got meetings in English. They don't have meetings in vernacular. And so in education get kind of kept confused by not wanting to make that tough decision of saying our English, our language of learning should be English.
Okay, so you're saying that practically it sounds like it should be one language consistently that will be more beneficial. Okay, we went completely over time. Yes, it was fascinating, and I do believe any parent or anyone who cares about education should go back to our podcast and listen. Just want to thank you all for really being with us today. And thank you to Funda Wanda for the amazing work you're doing. So thank you, Simpewe. Thank you, Fundi. Thank you, Dr. Muavia. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, Craig, for managing the show perfectly. Thank you to Senna for putting these interviews in place. And thank you to our listeners here week after week with us. Stay tuned. Other great shows. We will be back on next Monday at 11 o'clock. Thank you so much for today.